Good. We'll see when people join. Rock and roll.
All right.
Hopefully, I gave everyone the right information.
I mean, I used the same email that you sent out to everybody.
All right, perfect. Then that means I did it right, hopefully. Dun, 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 dun.
Dude, how about, you still got a little glow going on?
Feeling good, feeling good. Oh, we got a few people joined. We got Ed and Brian. Rock and roll. You fixing the salad, buddy?
Yeah, trying.
There you go.
I don't know, like, salad's not ideal. It's what happens. I got it's like thin and out. I can't really do much about it.
So what happens? You're like 92 years old.
I know. Really, at least I'm protecting like the bald spot. You can't quite see the bald spot.
Yeah, just wear a hat. No one will see anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, make it an AP racing hat, even better.
I think it's poofy. Well, I might go get one.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we got about 6 people on. We're going to give it another minute or two for anyone that's listening in until we have a quorum. Hey, Kathy Potts. You're looking healthy and non-working out, which is a good thing. You're on mute too, though, so that's even better. Andy Kathy's been hurt, as you know, for a while now. And we finally decided that, and this is a good lesson for everyone out there, that she's not gonna train. She's for the past, I don't know, 6 months. It's okay, 7 months. It's okay if I bike. It doesn't bother it. She didn't bike for like 2-3 weeks. She's like, oh, I actually feel better. I go, oh, weird. Hey. So that's a good lesson for everyone. You can either let your injury drag on for months and months, or you could just nip it in the bud. It's like being sick. If you try and train when you're sick, you half train for weeks instead of just not training for about 4 or 5 days and then get better.
Yes. Although sometimes when you're in the moment, it's really hard to tell and really hard to kind of work through. Like you just feel like you're like, oh, I'll keep working through it, and I'm just feeling crummy. And you, like, even I need an outside eyes and ears on it to say, hey, you really should probably press pause here.
Yeah.
And that, like, no, I don't think there's an amount of experience that you can have that will negate that, because it happened to me this year.
A little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I spent all of January just like, hey, I'm not sure. I'm just not feeling great. I'll just keep pushing.
Yeah, and that never works. And then what'd you end up having? Do you remember? I know you remember.
Yeah, I had pneumonia.
Yeah. Yeah. Good thing you pushed through for those couple months without just getting better.
Yeah. So 2.5 months of pneumonia and didn't know.
Yeah.
And I figured it out.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
Yeah. After the wife said, you need to go to the doctor now.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing like a broken back like Dave has, but he's still busting out workouts. So we're good, right, Dave?
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. I just, I think I'm going to go run. Oh, yeah. How long ago did you break your back? A couple weeks ago.
It's doing good now. It's doing pretty good. I'm getting my speed back a little bit.
That works. All right,
on treadmill though. Still.
Okay, nothing wrong with that.
All right, so we are going to kick things off here. The big message and lesson today that we want to go over is the adaptations in training. How do you know when you're adapting? How do you know when you're stagnant? And how do you kind of, is it possible to force the issue, or do you always have to be patient? And those are kind of the questions that we're looking at. When Daniel and I and our coaches write workouts and we develop plans for each and every individual, what we really try to do is turn the dial for you, so there's not a lot of like you should be internalizing it, and you don't need to have the extra step of, forcing the issue. We are looking for constant adaptation, but just because you add either volume or intensity one week after the next, it doesn't necessarily mean your body is adapting to the work. Sometimes you'll spend 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at the same intensity before there's adaptation. And you can get adaptations through volume, through intensity, through those are probably the two biggest adaptations that are very noticeable, but you can't get there without the consistency. If you need consistency, or if without consistency, what you have is these flash in the pans, and it's like, oh, this singular workout was great, but when you look at like a dot matrix of progression, you just don't have enough points on the data spots to get real adaptation. When you boil it down to an individual workout, the key things that you can think about beyond pure numbers. So whether you are looking at your bike computer, or your lap swim times, or your miles per hour, miles on a track, or out on the trails, that objective feedback is really good, but you're not. I'm not, and you guys, when we work together, you're not only looking at that number. Daniel and I do a skit where we kind of do a perceived level of exertion in terms of like the conversation piece, what things should feel like in zone 2, what things should feel like and look like in zone 4. And that's a really good subjective piece that you guys can use on a daily basis. The last piece that I've been really trying to mine this year is, there's a saying where if it doesn't challenge you, it's not changing you. And the change is happening on multiple levels, whether that's at the cellular or blood level, or it's happening at the in your mind, or in the emotional level. If it's not challenging you, it's not changing you, is a really nice thing to think about in a rep. Am I doing enough? Keep pushing. Am I pushing hard enough? This is good. This is plenty. I'm feeling challenged here right in this moment. That in and of itself is enough to elicit hopefully a positive change. And if you visit that space of just challenge yourself in the moment, in the rep, in the set, in the cycle, in the workout, in the day, in the week, in the month, blah, blah, blah. That's enough to have your body start to respond to the workload, and that will give you adaptations.
AP, can I jump in here for a second real quick?
Yeah.
So this is actually something where you made me think about something you and I were talking about 2 days ago. And I think it's important when you say, like, is it challenging you in the rep or the set? Remember, we were talking about like max intervals and max work. I think it's important to distinguish that. So like a 2-minute rep challenging you is different than a 2-hour rep challenging you. And 2 hours at max, or 3 by 30 minutes at max, is different than 3 by 2 minutes at max. So it's really important to say, well, how can I have sustained, and the word you used, repeatable efforts that challenge me? Like, a lot of times we'll look at in swimming, like best average over a 500, but we're swimming 50s or 75s, right? And I think that's important to distinguish for people. Do you want to touch on that a little more too?
Yeah, let's go with the swimming one, because it's a really good piece. All right, so let's say you do an add up something, okay? And this works for biking and running. We're going to use swimming as the example. So we'll do an add up 500, and it'll go a 200, a 150, 100, and a 50. That adds up to 500. So you are actually going to go faster on the 50 than you will on the 200. But to have the fastest add up, if you kind of let go just a little bit on the effort and the intensity on the 200, that's going to be your biggest differentiator for a fast add up 500, because you're at the longest duration. So the longest duration of, in this example, is a 200. Let's just say you want to go, let's do easy math here. Let's say you want to go 5 minutes, add up 500. You're going to go probably like a 204 in the 200, a 132 in the 150, a 58 in the 100, and a 26 in the 50. And all of a sudden that's 5 minutes. But 26 seconds for a 50 is very different speed than a 204, but the effort is still like, you're trying to meter out over the distance and the duration a maximal repeatable effort that will get you to the line in the most efficient manner possible. So like when I do a time trial on a bike, it's a time trial. It's an hour time trial, or longer or shorter. But the first 10 minutes, they feel like, oh, I'm not sure if this is like, I'm challenging myself. The last 10 minutes, even if I don't change a thing, it is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that this wasn't going to be enough, because this is more than plenty. And this is a big challenge for me. And over that distance is the key differentiator in your mind. Daniel, are you gonna say something?
Yeah, and for people who, like we work on our race plans, like let's say for an Ironman, you'll hear a lot like we're building, and then like in a marathon, mile 21 to 26, we're building again, right? And we say you might not go faster, but you're building your effort, because those last 10, 20, 30 minutes is harder. So that's why we train that way too. And it's really important to understand that. And going back to Andy's original topic, how do you know if it's challenging you and changing you? It's when those last 10, 20 minutes, the last hour, you're controlling it instead of it controlling you. I mean, it still feels like you're a little on the edge, but you can dictate to the race or dictate to the training session what's going to happen, not have it dictate to you and you're like, and you just blown to bits.
So I like this. So I was thinking about that. I did a race this past weekend, and for the first, it was kind of like, I broke it into 4 segments. It was 2 laps, and there was a kind of 180 turnaround, so you could break it up. And on the first outbound lap, I said to myself, and you guys, this might resonate with you. Hopefully it does. So with the new super shoes and the carbon plates, I was thinking, just let the shoes do the work. You don't need to do extra. You're going plenty fast enough. Let the shoes do the work. And I was like trying to run with good form and good position to allow the shoes to help propel me more and more and more. And as the race progressed, I started to rely less and less on the shoes and more on the effort, like me controlling the effort. And on the last segment of the 4, it was like, I don't like, you're just pushing. You forget you even have shoes on, and because you get a little delirious and you're just like, keep pushing, keep going up. And I did not go a second faster, but the effort was so much more demanding. And when I look back at like the splits, they were really even, but I really ramped up the effort as it progressed.
Yeah. All right, AP. So people are about, let's say they started like December, January, right? They're like 4 months into their training block right now. They might have a race coming up. They might have just raced, whatever. How do they look at their training and say, oh, look, I'm getting better. I'm adapting to training. Now I need to change something else, or this is going good, all march forward.
All right. So number 1, let's look back as a collective, just in your own mind, to, maybe let's look at the second week in January. Whether that you go back and look at a training log, or you go back to like what you think you were doing in your mind. One of the really nice telltales that's subjective is when you were doing a 90-minute ride, it was like, whew, 90 minutes, like an hour and a half. Like that's a long bike ride. And now when you look at your volume, you're looking at it going, oh, 90 minutes, that's really repeatable and manageable in terms of not only my physical effort, but massaging it and where it fits in my day. If we were to pinch you down and say, hey, it's a 90-minute ride, like that accordion on your time feels a lot less. So you have not only the mental wherewithal to get through a longer workout, it feels less daunting, and you can manage more tasks within that moment. You can start to kind of use the first half hour as a warm-up, but you are doing other mental tasks. Whereas looking back in January, it was like, oh, I really need to concentrate for an hour on my hour bike ride. And now it seems like it's not that big of a deal. And that's a really nice adaptation thing that subjectively that you should have in your bank and experience reservoir right now. I'd say that's probably a big one. Daniel, do you have an objective one that you think of?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the mental acuity side of things, because I mean, I can tell you myself right now, I go out for a 30-minute run, and it's like mentally I struggle even just to like, I'm like, this is dragging on forever. But when you get into it, you're like, oh, hour and a half, 2-hour runs, no problem. Like, you're just ticking it off. You're like, oh, that was great. And so I think that's the biggest one for people that aren't into numbers or can't like really drill down to it. That's an awesome one. Objectively, I mean, I really look at time at rest, like work to rest, and like, oh, I can recover quicker at the same effort, or I can give more effort at the same recovery. And that's like a big one for me. So like a lot of people are like, oh, my average power is up, or my power for intervals are up, my 5-second, 10-second power is up, right? I look more at like, oh, at the same power for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm recovering in 10 seconds or 30 seconds instead of 2 hours, right? Or I mean, 2 minutes. And then I can do more work at that effort too. So it's like, oh, it starts off, it's like, oh, 15 minutes of work at the LT2. Now I'm at like, I don't know, an hour 10 at LT2. And oh, that's a big difference for me.
So as we look forward and we start to get better weather, this is a really nice transition point, because weather starts to get a little bit better. You can start to pick and choose when you want to ride outside and then inside, and then you start to ride outside predominantly. What I like to think of is I go out and I'll do my work, and my work is good, but then I limp home. It's like, whether that's on the track or out on the road or in a swim, like I'll come home and I'm like, I need to nap, right? But I can't nap, but I think to myself, I want to nap. And on the bike, it's like, I'll look at my numbers coming, like, so I'll go to a hill and do a bunch of repeats, and then just like, it's like a creep home. And I'll look at my average power coming home. It's like 68 watts. Oh boy. Because you just got nothing left, right? And then as you start to adapt to it, maybe the intervals and the work, it's not getting that much better. It's incremental. You got to kind of like get a microscope out or get a magnifying glass to really like, dig down deep into it. But you start coming home and you're like, oh, I'm like, you're doing these intervals at like 200 watts. And then you come home and you're like, oh, I'm pushing 150 coming home, or whatever those numbers are, right? Yeah. But you're able to put more work in. So the main set, maybe that gets a little better, but the parentheses that surround the main set, they become the solidifiers. It's like, oh no, this is how to warm up. So I know I'm getting the most out of within the parentheses. And then the actual parentheses are getting better. And so the whole body of work just starts to build on itself. And that's another great way to look at how you're adapting to work. It's not only the work in and of itself, it's what's happening in terms of the lead up. Are you able to actually get better in terms of priming and more work to get ready to work? And then on the offset, it's, oh, I'm not limping home. I'm kind of itchy to get home because I know I got other things on my mind, and you're actually mentally able to be like, oh yeah, I forgot I need asparagus.
Yeah.
I got the store because I said that there's potatoes and asparagus and chicken, not just potatoes and chicken for tonight. And I forgot, like, whereas before it's like, I can't even contemplate what's for dinner.
You can't even contemplate how to get home some of the times.
Yeah.
And like getting home, and like sometimes getting home as you get better gets better, and it gets longer too. It's like, oh, I'll do an hour and a half to get home today, like instead of the 20-minute limp. Yeah, I just thought of one other objective thing I look at a lot as we get closer and closer to races. I look at time spent at race effort, distance down, like for the day and for the week. So like if you're racing an Ironman, I look at how much time I'm spending at 70.3 effort for a day and for the entire week, and like how that translates into racing. So like at the beginning, you're probably not spending that much time, but as it goes on, it's growing and growing. It's probably getting closer to your distance up race distance. That's a big one I use for our athletes.
Distance up, meaning I really am getting ready for a half Ironman, but what's happening with my Ironman numbers?
No, the other way around. So like racing an Ironman, and in an Ironman, it doesn't matter what it is. It takes me 5 hours, let's say, on the bike. We'll use that. But at half Ironman, let's say I push 270 in a half Ironman, right? How much time am I? Oh, super strong. I got muscles. Let's say you push, I say, all right, how much time am I spending in the day and then in the week at 270 as I'm getting ready for my Ironman? And that's what that's another one I look at, because it starts small and it grows and grows.
I do the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a good one.
I'm a reference into the chat box here. We got a question from Dave. Bike adaptations. How much time do you actually spend in aero during training rides? Do you train with road bikes ever? Indoor rides too? Always in aero? Okay. So I do think that riding an aero on a trainer, it helps a little bit, but the engine that you're really working on in an indoor training ride is the main thing. Dana and I talk a lot about like keep the main thing the main thing. When you're on a trainer, you're really working the engine and the muscles. I don't ride a ton in aero indoors. I actually had this conversation, no joke, this morning with a friend of mine, and I said, are you, because we both did the race, and I was like, oh, my spinal erectors, like the muscles that line your spine, mine were a little sore. And I was like, I don't spend a ton of time in aero, and I felt it on the race. And he was like, oh, I do spend a lot of time in aero and trainers, and I don't feel it. I don't think it affected my performance. I'm just a little sore. So,
yeah, disclaimer, he's also 20 years younger than
you. True. So, but I do think that there's a little bit of value in there, but not as much as people attribute and people want to just ride in aero. I think when you're riding inside, get comfortable, make it repeatable, and make it manageable. If it's always uncomfortable, then you're less apt to do the work. And then when the work gets really hard, you will pull the pin earlier than maybe necessary. So when I ride outside, I probably spend maybe 30% of my time outside in aero, maybe a quarter, 30%. Is that, I mean, Daniel, you tell me, because it's almost like
I'd say it's probably closer to 30% when we're doing interval work in the right spot. But it really depends on your terrain and traffic. And our terrain where we live is really variable. So we spend less time than you think. I think as we get closer to racing and we're TTing more, we're spending more time. Like, think about like
up Palmer
Decker,
Park.
yeah, Palmer Park, Deckers, stuff like that. We're spending more time in Arrow. It's probably still only 30% though, maybe a little more.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Sometimes, like when it's just you'll overestimate it. That's why I was asking Daniel when we ride together, how much is he seeing me in Arrow? I do ride a road bike, especially when it's crazy hilly or if I want something different. My legs, they don't know the difference. The position's a little different. The hip's a little bit more open, but the way that my position is dialed up in the time trial bike. So like, let's take a road bike. You're kind of like this. All I'm doing is I'm taking this same position and I'm turning it. I'm not necessarily clamping it down and really adjusting it. It's the same, almost the same hip angle in terms of in relation to my torso, which would be the fingers, and my legs, which would be the palm. I'm just kind of turning my body in space as opposed to revamping the whole how I'm working on a bike. So I do ride outside on a road bike, especially like if I go climb Pikes Peak. My preference is a road bike. I have done it on a time trial bike. If it's crazy hilly, it's definitely a road bike. Or if I'm with friends and we're all riding road bikes, then yeah, road bike it is. But I do spend I would say over 90% of my rides are on the time trial bike because that's what. If you were asking me and I this is my job, so I need to get it dialed. Yeah, I would say 90% is on a time trial bike.
Yep, exactly. All right, so this is next question in the chat. How do we deal with neck soreness outdoors when trying to stay in Arrow for longer periods of time, especially if we don't ride indoors in Arrow that much? And I think, Andy, this is kind of what you were just saying. Like, there's a couple things here. First, you need to have a good position, right? And like Andy said, taking this angle and just turning it puts you in a good position. A lot of people, like Andy said, just close it, and that messes up with your hips, and you start messing with your neck and everything else for that matter. So position is really important. The other thing, which is like, what is it? Smooth is fast. Relaxed is fast too. A lot of people, when they ride a bike, they start to clamp down and really grip on the bars, however they're doing it. So you got to try and stay relaxed, right position. And you don't need your head up all the time. The more you relax your head and bring it down, the more comfortable you're going to be. I don't think we've ever done exercises to strengthen our neck or our back for this. It just comes from riding over time. So as you ride outside a little more, even indoors, and you get in the position a little bit, being in the right position and just staying relaxed is really important.
Yeah, I think Ed on this one, that what Daniel alluded to right off the jump is that bike fit. If you're really craning your neck and it's putting a ton of stress on it, I would look at other aspects, the 5 points where you're touching the bike, what's the hip angle look like, your bike fit in general. Let me see if I have a picture. I don't know if I have like a picture readily available of me riding a bike, but you can see I'm not actually that closed. I actually ride pretty open in terms of the hip angle, and the way that I'm positioning my hands, my head, it's supported by my skeleton more than my muscles. And that's what promotes a good bike fit is as you sit on the bike, you can kind of rest into your bike position. And that's super helpful when it comes to being comfortable on the bike. I'll try to find a picture. I'll throw it up there.
Yeah. And the other thing with this is like, there's no perfect fit or answer. Everyone's physiology is a bit different. So like some athletes bring their elbows in a little more and it supports the skeletal system more. Others, like I know myself, I actually like my elbows out more and I kind of lean forward off of them. And that really helps me support my neck. And I can just kind of rest my head and my neck in there. So you have to figure out like physiologically what your limitations are, what's good for you or not good for you.
Can we see this? I'm gonna change my backdrop.
Out of blurry mode.
Yeah, out of blurry, right? So background effects. No.
Dude, look at you. You're like tech support today. Let's go.
Yeah, maybe not. Oh, there you go. There's a keyboard. Okay. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So you can see here, like I can rest in and my neck and head. This is me really craning my head forward to look forward.
Yeah.
That's as much as I will crane my neck. And it's
Hey now.
hey now. That's funny. So that's as much as I'll crane my neck to look forward. Otherwise, I'm really relaxed in the position. And I just I will peek up. I'll look up with my eyes, not necessarily pulling my chin away from my chest. Very similar to swimming in that regard. Like once you pull the chin away from your chest, there are other things that get affected. Same thing in the bike. Like if you can have a neutral head with your spine and you use your eyes to do a lot of the the sighting, then you can alleviate some of that.
Yeah, I mean, and Andy, show that picture again real quick.
Yeah.
So if you look at Andy, right, his elbows are almost in line with his chin there, right, to give him a good support base. If you watch like some other riders, and I know myself, my elbows are actually even a little further out because of the way I like to lean on the bars. So it just depends on you and what you need, and it's really important. You got a voicemail, Andy, just so you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Cool. All right. We got
the other thing here on this fit, you'll notice a lot of people what the old fit was, and we were talking about bike fit before, but the old fit, there's an evolution to it, right? So I will constantly tweak my fit based off of my morphology as it's changing as I'm growing older. So I used to have my elbows right underneath my shoulders, and it was a right angle right here. And as I've gotten stronger and developed into the bike and the position, my elbows actually are now further, like Daniel pointed out, they're further in front of my shoulders. And that gives me a sleeker position in terms of what the wind sees as well.
Yeah. All right. If there's other questions, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, Andy, anything else you want to touch on in terms of, seeing adaptations, how people know their training's going well or not, so on and so forth?
Well, we got one more question in here.
It's not a question.
Comment.
Good
yeah.
one. Yeah.
So if you can't hold the position, then this is also why when people look at aero tunnels and aero data, it can be a bit of a misnomer, because if you can't hold the position, it doesn't matter what the drag coefficient ends up being, because you end up coming out and you're in a parachute anyway and you're upright. So I would actually default into like what you nailed it right off the bat, Daniel. You said comfort first, because when you can relax and be comfortable, that adds to speed. If you can't be comfortable in an aero position, then that's the focus of the task, is like get comfortable in aero and then start to mine marginal gains in terms of like, oh, now how can I look at being faster in this position that I'm comfortable, as opposed to how do I just get faster and then abort comfort? Because let's just say you're able to hold it, and it's really uncomfortable, but you're just like, you're crazily strong mentally and physically, and you're able to hold it. There are ripple effects, like it'll affect you, whether it's on your power on the bike. Maybe you're even faster on your bike, but then it affects you when you run. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I kind of moved away from your question before, Daniel.
It's all good. My question was, anything else people should be thinking about in terms of like what they should be looking for in their training right now, adaptations and so on and so forth, or just some final good thoughts?
Yeah. So now, like we were alluding to before, now is a great time to start to look outside for some added stimulus. As the weather starts to get a little bit better, you can pick and choose. If it doesn't change you, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you is a nice mantra. And then I guess as your races get closer, sometimes that can lead to apprehension and doubt. And my comment on this is like, just move. Wait 10 minutes before you give yourself a referendum on if the day's going good or bad, or if the set's going good or bad. And then after that, wait 5 minutes. Wait 5 more minutes. Just give yourself a little bit of time in the movement before you say you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I have one other thought on this, kind of, which is like everyone shows up to and this happened this last week in Oceanside. Congratulations to everyone, by the way, who raced. Awesome job, everyone out there. It was fantastic. When you have that first race, that first hitter, it could be daunting, or you can have the greatest race ever, or you can have like just a blowout. It happens. Like Andy said, give yourself a chance. And the first race is really hard. We always talk about you race into fitness, or you get hardened through racing. So the more you can race, the more often you race, the more experience you can have for yourself, tools in the tool bag, the better you're going to feel stepping on the start line. Like I think, Andy, you even had some transition mishaps this week too, right? Which is like a little thing, but it happens in racing.
Just stuff to clean up. Like I can clean up some stuff, and I think I was close, but I got stuff to work on for sure.
Yeah. And like kind of you said too, no matter how hard your efforts are in training, a race just feels a little different. And so getting that race experience really helps. So, give yourself a chance, and you'll have a good day and have future better days. Cool. Any other questions out there, guys? If there's not, we're going to give it 10 seconds while Andy checks his voicemail. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. That was the bank. Silicon Valley. All right. Let's see here. No more questions. So I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Get out there. What do you say?
I said lots of little nuggets in there. Hopefully one kind of resonates with you.
Yeah, if something pops up in the next day or two after you watch us over 10 or 20 times more and you have a question, just hit us up and we'll get to it. Either email or in one of our Facebook groups, or you could, I don't know, you could send us a postal message as well if you like. All right, guys, that was fun. Thank you. Peace.
Later.